Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for a very strong attendance. My name is Vatche Kourkejian. I'm a senior partner and I lead the energy practice for Roland Berger in the region. Before introducing this wonderful panel of wonderful individuals with comprehensive dimensions and aspects that will make this topic very rich in discussion, maybe to give a bit of a context on what gathers us here today and why these wonderful people on the stage here. So we're talking about powering sustainability and evolving electric grids from an angle also from mobility. And this is where energy and mobility are intersecting. And as all of you would be aware, shifting energy demand towards electrification based on renewables is key to the global decarbonization. Everybody agrees to that. We can throw in a lot of numbers and statistics in terms of expectation. The key underlying, let's say, belief is that we need to increase the rate of renewables in our grids, and at the same time, we need to also make use of electric vehicles to decarbonize transportation. And we know globally that the transportation, and especially the land transportation segment, represents nearly 10% of all carbon emissions. So you need to tackle that. And the way to tackle it and enable it is through having also charging infrastructure in a very fast way. And hence, that is where the two, let's say, distinct historically value chains of energy and mobility are intersecting. And I expect a lot of interesting highlights and insights that will come out of this discussion. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce my dear panelists here, starting with Mr. Mohammed Blahid, who basically heads the energy sector for PIF. Mr. Mohammed Al-Shiha, who also heads PIF's automotive and mobility sector. Brahim Al-Khanezan, who is Executive Vice President of Distribution and Customer Service at the Saudi Electricity Company. Mohammed Gazzaz, congratulations, CEO for Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Company. And last but not least, Faisal Sultan, Vice President and Managing Director for Lucid Middle East. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. And let's get to the topic. So starting with Mohammed, renewables and electrification are key to any decarbonization program and initiatives, obviously. How is the PIF and its portfolio companies supporting the KSA economy in transitioning to the new era of renewable energy, energy efficiency, and electrification?
Sure. Thank you very much. So when it comes to the PIF strategy, when it comes to energy, the overarching theme that we're following is energy transition. And decarbonization is really at the heart of it. Since the announcement of PIF's new strategy in 2016, all of our investments have been heavily in renewable energy production, in energy efficiency, hydrogen, waste management, district cooling, among other things. And hopefully I'll be able to touch upon all of those in this session. PIF also invests across the value chain, from supply, generation, transportation, and also the end use of renewables. The main theme that PIF is focusing on today is increasing the renewable generation within the energy mix. KSA has set a target to reach 50% from the energy mix to be through renewables. Hence, PIF has been mandated to develop 70% of that program. Of course, when we translate that to gigawatts, that's quite a large target that we want to achieve by 2030. And in order to do that, PIF needs to have the capabilities, the investment appetite to deliver on this program at cost and on time. This program started a few years ago, and it's mainly being managed by PIF and Aqua Power, in which we own 44%. Since then, we have executed 3 rounds of PIF renewable program. The first one was around 2.5 years ago. We kickstarted this project with their PV project of 1.5 gigawatts. Today, this project is up and running, producing renewable electricity. For the second round, we are today constructing around 2.6 gigawatts, again, of PV projects in KSA. For the third round, we expect the financial close of around 4.6 gigawatts, hopefully by the end of this year. And of course, we expect in the next waves that this cycle of growth is going to continue to happen in order to reach our targets in 2030. Having said that, although this is the main theme we're investing in, there are a lot of other elements of decarbonization that we're working on. On the demand side, we're working on hydrogen, which I will touch upon later on, and on the supply side. And on the demand side, we're working on energy efficiency and reducing the consumption of electricity. And the two main elements we're working on is energy efficiency and district cooling, which is a big theme coming to Saudi Arabia, especially with all the giga projects that are happening. Of course, to deliver that program and to deliver resilient, stable electricity, you have to also have the proper infrastructure to do that, which is the transmission and distribution. Not only heavy investments needs to happen on the generation, but also on the transmission side. And I would assume this aspect will be covered in more detail with my colleague, Ibrahim Al-Khanizan, and hopefully I'll be able to share more details on the other initiatives we're working on from the PIF side.
Thank you, Hamad. And indeed, we'll get to Ibrahim on that topic of, how PIF, SEC together are enabling, the grid to basically expand, to basically be able to fulfill and dispatch all the gigawatts of electricity renewables that you and your team are working on. And of course, we see the past years, all the foundations being set, and we can only expect an acceleration on that front. So we'll get to that, Ibrahim. But moving on to Hamad, tell me, how is the PIF strategically positioning itself to support the rapid evolution and rollout of electric vehicles in the country?
Thank you, Vatche, and happy to be here with my colleagues in the ecosystem. Let me, put some context. Historically, Saudi Arabia has been the only G20 country that has never developed an automotive industry. Now, this has changed. Over the past 3 years, this is no longer the case. Now, the automotive is part of the PIF strategy that focuses on 13 priority sectors. So automotive is one of these sectors with a focus on local investments and also on international investments. You've seen, the announcements by Lucid, and I would say Lucid was the nucleus of the automotive movement in Saudi. After that came the announcement of SEER, which is the national automotive brand, and 2 days ago there was the announcement of the joint venture with Hyundai. So this is our third mega automotive projects in Saudi Arabia. There is also a focus on research and development within automotive, especially on clean mobility, clean energy solutions, electrifications, hydrogen fuel cells, that is coming to Saudi with each of these projects. Now, that's on OEMs or the car itself, but we're also looking at the full value chain. For example, we announced the SARع Mobility Investments. This will be the automotive investment arm of the PIF, focusing on the value chain, A to Z, whether it's batteries, recycling of batteries, parts, plastics, investing even in technologies outside Saudi to bring them to Saudi Arabia. So to summarize, I would say that Saudi now is well underway to become a major automotive hub by 2030, 400 to 600,000 vehicles. Bearing in mind, this is something that took other countries decades to achieve. We're achieving in 7 to 10 years.
Indeed, quite impressive. I also followed some of the news along the years, and exactly to what I said to Muhammad here about, we expect also it's very strong acceleration on the even automotive side with all the deals that have been made and the localization initiatives that you're putting in place, especially on the supply chain side. So quite exciting times. Looking forward to that. Ibrahim, moving on to you. Grid infrastructure is seen globally as both the key enabler, obviously for EV, electrification, etc., but also potentially, and in a lot of cases, a bottleneck. How is the SEC approaching this challenge of integrating the rapid growth of KSA Renewables capacities, and also at the same time the huge increase in demand, especially those coming from Muhammad Shiha?
Thank you, Vatche. Assalamu alaikum. Jazakumullah bil khair. Glad to be here with you today. I do agree with you when it comes to grid infrastructure. It is considered and seen either a key enabler or potential bottleneck. To address that, SEC focused on many aspects, very important aspects. Number one is the close coordination, proactive engagement, proper planning with the key stakeholder. For instance, the way we are working with our colleagues in principal buyer allowed this EC to design, implement projects on time, and we were able to evacuate the power from those renewable power plants to the grid. This is for the supply side. When we look at the demand side, it applies for the same thing, that working very closely with the key stakeholder like PIF when it comes to giga projects and also municipalities allow this EC to keep up with the massive demand. To put things in perspective, this year we expect to reach from 3 to 4% as annual growth in our sales. This is number one. Number two, the adaptation of smart grid as a strategic direction for SEC. This is something we worked on very seriously a long time ago for the transmission network, and we moved to the distribution network, and we started with the smart meter project, and we rolled out the smart meter project all over the kingdom. And now we are working on the last piece, which is automating and making the remaining piece of the distribution network. This allowed this EC to be ready for electrification and grid decarbonization. The third important aspect is the adaptation of digitalization, AI, smart solution for power dispatching, load prediction, load forecast. This also allowed this EC to be agile and to keep up with the massive renewable energy penetration within the kingdom. I do believe also it is very important, the fourth one, which is regarding development of our talent. Nevertheless, that the clean energy brings lots of value and benefits, but also it brings its own challenges. So we have to develop our talent with the required skill set in order to keep up with the rapid change from renewable energy. The fifth aspect, in my opinion, was what we call unlocking the grid and paving the way for more renewable by either adapting new technology like the high voltage DC, and this is something we are working very closely with the Ministry of Energy, and it's under development, or removing what we call congestion from the network by replacing or upgrading network component. Last but not least, I think choosing, attracting, working with the competent partner, it's key essential for SEC. We have a huge and massive investment plan, and we do need the competent partners, either in manufacturing or or as a supplier or as a contractor or developer. So in a nutshell, I would say that the proper engagement, proactive engagement and communication with the key stakeholder, the adaptation of smart grid and smart solution, and the development of SEC talent, and also adapting the new technology like high voltage DC, and finally working with the right partner. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibrahim. Now, moving on to Muhammad. It's an understatement to say there's a huge task in front of you.
Yes.
And gentlemen here that talked before you, they also have very high expectations. So what are the plans here to make sure that you're actually the enabler? We don't want to be, the bottleneck here. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the kingdom has very clear ambitions towards driving electrification. And one of the key pillars in driving EV adoption in any market globally is the availability of a charging network, a robust charging network. One of the challenges that we've seen in a lot of markets globally is always this chicken or the egg conversation. On one side, you have investors that are reluctant to deploy capital into building out this infrastructure due to the limited number of EVs on the road. Yeah. And at the same time, you have consumers and customers that are hesitant to purchase electric vehicles as a result of the lack of infrastructure. PIF took a very conscious decision in addressing this upfront by creating this company and starting the deployment of the infrastructure. Our goal as a company by 2030 is to deploy a total of 5,000 chargers across 1,000 locations throughout the kingdom. And in order for us to achieve that, we had to clearly define what it is exactly we're going to focus on, but just as importantly, what we're not going to be focusing on to ensure that we're not distracted on our journey. Number one, it's in terms of accessibility. The network that we're building is a publicly accessible network, meaning that EV drivers will be able to charge whenever they want to or need to. Number two is convenience. The vast majority of the 5,000 chargers that we're deploying are going to be DC fast chargers, ensuring that we create a network whereby we're able to reduce the amount of time that EV drivers spend charging their vehicles. And last but not least, and definitely perhaps the most important, is related to the partnerships. This is an industry where partnerships are absolutely key in being able to scale that kind of infrastructure and network in order to hit the numbers that we're targeting.
Fantastic. Now, Faisal, on to you. You have the exciting cars, producing them here also locally. Just to understand, how is Lucid adapting its strategy to become a leader in sustainability or sustainable mobility solutions?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to be here, actually. You've got all the right people here, so that's really great to see. Look, Lucid is all about, providing solutions that take the transportation solutions towards something that is enjoyable to drive. At the same time, it's luxurious, and at the same time, it is also taking the full advantage of the whole sustainability theme. And when I say that, what I mean is it's not just the range anymore. When you talk about sustainability, it's also about the time you spend on the electric charger. It's how much are you going to, deploy the resources of the grid? Can you help the grid itself balance itself, right? So these are all solutions that, an OEM, a product, can work with partnerships. So that has been our theory right from the beginning, and that's why you have Lucid Air has won numerous awards. The fastest charging vehicle in the world, the longest range in the world with 880 plus kilometers on a single charge. And by being the fastest charging vehicle, we spend about 13 to 15 minutes on a charger, a fast charger, and giving 500 kilometers of range back to the consumer. So that's where the sustainability portion comes, and the type of materials that you're using, in the value chain, minimizing that. So our motor size is the smallest motor size, but it gives you the best power to weight ratio. So these are the type of things that Lucid will keep working on, because that's what truly a sustainable company will do.
Exciting elements and quite complex. I mean, there's so many factors that you need to address, and sustainability is not only about clean renewables, but also even to the extent of materials and making sure that the vehicles are, user-friendly, let's say, so that more people adopt it, like you said.
Exactly.
That will also drive more decarbonization. Hamad, coming back to you. Given the global focus on the energy transition, how does KSA approach differ or is in line with the international strategies on this front?
Thank you. So Saudi Arabia's approach doesn't necessarily differ from other global practices, but there are many models that are being implemented globally. And KSA consciously have
Hard
selected
يسمع صح؟
certain mechanisms when it comes to regulation and commercial arrangements to be able to develop the renewable program and the high capital intensive infrastructure investments. So when it comes to renewable generation, KSA has adopted competitive-based long-term power purchase agreements, which has worked quite well for Saudi Arabia. Through these arrangements, Saudi Arabia was able to consistently break the records when it comes to renewable power generation. And today, the cheapest power source of renewables is in Saudi Arabia, with almost $1 per kilowatt of renewables. Of course, having said that, the renewable resources is the main enabler to be able to produce cheap resources. But also the commercial structure is quite important.
Yep.
And for KSA, this is one of the main reasons why we are able to produce energy so cheaply. And the other models we see in the market or globally is spot markets to price energy. And over the past few years, with the disruption of the regional and global disruption of energy flows, has put these markets into significant challenges in terms of pricing and in terms of power supply. Fortunately, with the model that KSA is adopting, we haven't had these challenges. So long-term power purchase agreements, they provide competitive prices, resilient supply to the consumers, and also from the producer side. This is on the power supply side. The other area is the high capital investments in transmission and distribution. And over the past few years, Saudi Arabia has implemented the regulatory asset base. And this proved to be a very effective mechanism to be able to raise the proper cheap financing, to be able to deploy large-scale investments into that sector, which is being followed today by SEC. And they have a huge investment program on their grid that they already have been executing over the past few years. And this model has been working quite effectively for Saudi Arabia and for SEC itself. Now, when it comes to the technology side, Saudi Arabia is basically doing what the globe is doing, investing heavily, and we're going to continue to invest heavily in PV and in wind, which are the two most proven technologies. And this is the main technologies we want to introduce to reach the 50% renewable energy mix. But there are also other technologies that we expect to come online in the near future. As more renewables come into the energy mix, with the intermittency issue of renewables, the resilience of the system will be challenged in the near future. So one of the areas we're going to be looking into and invest heavily into is storage systems. This is probably the number one technology we would need to implement to really ensure that resilience going forward. So this is, in a nutshell, the approach that we're doing from a commercial perspective and also from a technological perspective when it comes to renewables.
Yeah, fully agree, especially on this storage side. I mean, it's an opportunity in the mid to long term that you're looking at, say, accumulated millions of batteries going around on the streets that you can also leverage ultimately for the grid and use that for flexibility purposes.
Absolutely, and I think this is going to be one of the strong synergy areas between the energy sector and the mobility sector. I think we can definitely consolidate demand when it comes to batteries and storage, and this is one of the areas we're discussing as of today.
Exciting stuff. Hamad, also along the same line, how does your PIFs and more your team strategy align with the broader global trends and challenges in electrification and sustainability, especially in the mobility segment?
Yeah, if you were to ask me 3 years ago, only 3 years ago, how would the future look like? How would the mobility equation looks like? We wouldn't have known. Now it's very clear. The future of mobility is electric. The future of mobility is hydrogen fueled. These two things will be essential elements of anything mobility related. If you look at the EV market, literally 7 to 10 years ago, it was less than $10 billion. Today it's $400 billion, the EV market. We at the PIF are investing around $50 billion over the next 10 years, both locally and internationally, in the EV mobility equation. And more on global trends, countries do have and cities do have aggressive clean mobility targets in terms of electrifications, bringing hydrogen fuel vehicles to the road, bringing pure electric vehicles to the road. We have the same in Saudi right now with the targets that have been announced already for Riyadh City, for example, to reach 30% electrification by 2030. And we have more targets also that will be announced soon, inshallah. And maybe more on the regulations. We are now also following the example of many countries around the world where stronger regulations or incentives are being developed to encourage clean mobility. So we are working with the Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Transport, Ministry of Investments to bring in the right suite of incentives and regulations to the consumer to encourage them to buy electric vehicles. So I would say we are aligned with what's happening globally, but we're aligned with trends, and in some areas we're setting new trends. For example, in the area of green hydrogen and its applications in mobility, you've seen the agreements with South Korea recently. There is a lot to be done there. I do believe hydrogen as a strategic resource for the kingdom has a big role to play in the mobility equation. Now we're working with the experts around the world to develop these solutions, to develop these technologies, and to bring them home here in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, and then maybe just to highlight here, because we also look into hydrogen quite extensively, it's not a question of a winner or loser between hydrogen and electric vehicles. They complement each other. You just need to position them in the right segments and for the right use cases, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. The transportation and mobility equation is huge.
Wide.
Yeah, and there is, and like you mentioned in the beginning, 50 to 70% of the pollution comes from there. There is a lot of opportunities that can be done there. I believe every technology has a role to play.
Exactly. Thanks, Muhammad. Brahim, how is SEC evolving its distribution strategies to ensure seamless power delivery?
Okay. Our vision in SEC is to be a leading power provider, delivering exceptional customer experience through innovative and sustainable solutions. And when you look at SEC's strategy, it was focused on strategic pillars like reliability and security of supply, operation excellence, and leading customer experience and brand. A great example of that is what SEC achieved through the smart meter project. During the implementation, we were able to communicate proactively with our valued customer, showing them the value of this huge and important project, and also highlighting the anticipated impact that might they experience during the implementation. And after the delivery, after the successful rollout and deployment of the smart meter project, we delivered our promise, and our customer today, for example, they are enjoying and they are enabled with tools and insights which will help them to monitor and to manage their consumption efficiently. For example, our valued customer today, they can compare their daily consumption weekly and monthly with their neighbors, peers. This will allow them to see where do they stand. Are they over-consuming? Are they efficient or not? Another great example is the availability or the smart solution we offer to them through our application, setting certain limits of their consumption. And there was a sort of innovative and smart way of notification. So if the customer, for instance, put a certain limit, they would like to get a notification or alert. So we designed the solution, and when they hit that number, there is a a sort of alarm or alert coming to them through the application. This will allow them, as I said, to be more efficient, to be more smart when it comes to their consumption. I think this is a very good example when it comes to the expectation from the customer side and the transformation that the company or country they might go through.
Exciting. Thank you, Ibrahim. Hamad, I mean, 5,000 points, charging points, quite a lot.
Yes.
You were telling me earlier on the sidelines that you will need, a lot of collaboration to get that done. So can you give me a bit of insight on what that means and what's in the plan for, partnerships, collaborations with public-private, segment?
Absolutely. We can spend hours having discussions and going into details on this. I'll try to summarize it as quickly as possible. On the real estate side, we're working with municipalities, real estate owners, developers, and operators to ensure that we identify the right locations that make sense to have EV chargers be installed. Not only that, but we're also ensuring that the specifications of the types of chargers that are being installed make sense for that specific location. In terms of automotive companies such as Lucid, we are ensuring that we gain from their experience globally and identify the issues and challenges that they've seen in other markets, ensure that we align our priorities, but not only that, also having conversations around the integration of our network into their onboard navigation systems so that it creates a very seamless experience for EV drivers. Number 3 is on the EPC side. And EPC is going to be a key factor for us in order to be able to scale at the level that we need to achieve our targets. And we're working with multiple EPC players. The rollout of DC hardware, DC chargers, is a lot more complicated than AC chargers or other electrical equipment. Yeah. So by ensuring that we're doing that across the board with multiple players, we create a full ecosystem and value chain that's able to support not only our ambitions, but also other players' ambitions as well as investment starts coming in. Number 4 is obviously SEC. One of the things that we see, there's a lot of learnings globally in terms of grid capacity and grid availability. And SEC is going to be obviously a key enabler and partner, also a shareholder, in terms of ensuring that they're able to enable us and the entire sector overall. I think last but not least is on the hardware and software side, ensuring that we partner with the best-in-class players in that space within the industry to maximize our uptime and reliability of the network so that we're able to focus our resources and efforts on the deployment and scalability of our network.
Cool. Thank you. Faisal, if you may, I mean, you're really in the center of the action. If you can share with us a bit your vision on how the EV sector, both locally and globally, would look like, and what would, Lucid play as a role in that transformation?
Yeah, I think, look, our role is to be the catalyst regionally and globally, as I said, by providing a product that actually makes that transition as smooth as possible. So for that to happen, you have to have partnerships, you need to have the product, you need to work with the policymakers to make sure that the policies are there. Mohammed touched on it too. So we are working towards that, and I think where I see the trend, I think as Mohammed said, I think 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I wouldn't be saying this, but I could definitely say that by 2030, majority of the cars that are going to be sold globally are going to be battery electric vehicles. And regionally, we have seen a similar pattern now developing with Saudi taking the lead, and some of the other countries around us also jumping on that bandwagon and then saying, look, we're going to have majority of our sales by 2030 in major cities to be electric vehicles and I think what is really driving that is the attention to detail from the policymakers. Saudi Green Initiative is a prime example of that. But then EWIC, the mobility company, the energy companies that PIF is putting together, the Ministry of Energy, SEC, all these partners now coming together and making that transition very smooth. So, it's not a worry anymore for someone who was 3 years ago thinking, should I jump into an electric vehicle? That decision is much easier for them to make because they can see electric chargers are coming, energy is there, and then the vehicle itself giving you the range. That range anxiety is a thing of the past. People used to think, can I drive 300 kilometers on a single charge? Every vehicle gives you that nowadays. You have 800 kilometers, 700 kilometer ranges that are available on a Lucid vehicle, and others are going to come with that type of range. So the range anxiety is going to go away. It's more of a adaptation, like an iPhone. If you go back, about 25 years ago, plug it in and forget about it, come back 2 hours later, get in the car at your home, or 5 minutes or 10 minutes in a public infrastructure charger that EVIC is going to be putting together, and be on your way. Go to a grocery store, do your grocery shopping, plug it in, come out. It's that easy. You don't even have to go to a gas station anymore. So I think that's my view. I think we're going to see fantastic product on the road by 2028, 2027. You're going to see a lot of electric vehicles on the road in Saudi.
Okay, thanks, Faisal. Conscious of time, 5 minutes remaining, maybe we have one or two more questions. So, Ahmed, starting with you, you're the lucky one. Taking a bit of a broader look at the decarbonization, just beyond EVs and electrification. Can you share with us a bit of more, the initiatives that your team is working on also towards that decarbonization and then sustainability?
Sure. I'm conscious of time, so I'll try to be very quickly. So when it comes to our initiatives, we do invest in a wide spectrum of green products, but touching on, first of all, on the demand side, I'll start with the supply side. So given that we're blessed with really strong renewable resources, a natural evolution of that is green hydrogen. And this is becoming a major focus area for Saudi Arabia, not only to supply green hydrogen for the use in Saudi, but also become a global hub to export green hydrogen, only because we're able to do that at the most competitive prices. And there are certain sectors that are hard to abate, mainly petrochemicals, shipping, sustainable aviation fuel, among other things. And green hydrogen represents a perfect solution for that. As you might know, Saudi Arabia is building the largest green hydrogen project in NEOM. There are 2 PIF portfolio companies involved, mainly Aqua Power and NEOM, and we're trying to build on that. Over the past year, we have established a national champion to lead the development of green hydrogen in Saudi Arabia. And our intention is really to start investing in green hydrogen production in Saudi, be it for export or local consumption, and also invest in the required infrastructure, be it pipelines, be it port terminals, or be it localization of technologies. So today, we are in active discussions with a lot of the import hubs. We're in active discussions with our colleagues from South Korea, which is going to be a big importer of green hydrogen. We're doing the same with our counterparties in Japan and also in Europe. And we want to do that with the best partners in the sector. When it comes to demand management, there are a few initiatives we're working on. The most prominent one is energy efficiency. 6 years ago, PIF established Tershid, which is a super ESCO company. And over the past 6 years, it was able to reduce the consumption of electricity by 5 terawatt hours per annum. This translates to an electricity bill of around 3 billion riyals per year and carbon abatement of around 3 million tons per annum. And the portfolio is growing from there. The second one, where we invested also last year, was district cooling. District cooling has the ability to reduce electricity consumption by around 30% compared to the other cooling technologies. And this is an area we think is going to pick up quite significantly, especially with the introduction of the new giga projects that will become our clients in that field. So combining these together, among other elements we're working on, such as waste management and waste to energy, which is another initiative we're working on, puts Saudi Arabia and PIF, or rather PIF, at the core of Saudi Arabia's energy transition mandate. And hopefully we'll be able to deliver on that and achieve not only PIF objectives, but also KSA objectives.
Thank you, Muhammad. I think we're run out of time in terms of questions. Maybe some closing remarks. Obviously, we touched one part of decarbonization, which is coming from mobility sector, and this was a very nice, collaboration, and we see a really very cohesive team here that's working from different angles with very clear roles, responsibilities, and also, of course, room for a lot of other players to come contribute, given the humongous, the scale of things to be achieved. You touched also on hydrogen. I think that's another opportunity to collaborate with the mobility team on hydrogen for transportation. All eyes on you to also achieve the huge goals on the EV side, because that will enable, right, all the deployment of EV, which Hamad Shiha and his team are also looking to produce more extensively in the region. So it's a lot of exciting times. Thank you for taking the time to join us on this panel. Thank you, everyone in the audience, for following up. Looking forward to seeing more successes in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.